Hi there, this is Tony Prince, and welcome to Volume 2 of my Elvis Trilogy of programs. In Volume 1, we reminisced about 1972, when we visited Elvis with the UK fan club for the very first time. In 1973, all kinds of things happened, and I have some interview material that has never been heard without Radio Luxembourg's infamous static. In other words, these are studio quality interviews, and I hope you enjoy hearing them as much as I enjoyed recording them. First up, we meet Elvis's Uncle Vester in the grounds of Graceland.
Uncle Vester, for the British fan club, we have meetings every year.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could just say a few words to all the fans of Elvis who couldn't make it on the tour over there in Great Britain and Europe. Here we are up at the Graceland's mansion. How many people per year do you get coming up here to see the house?
I guess I run about 300,000 to 400,000 a year, something like that.
That's a lot of people, isn't it?
Because we was running up to last week about 1,600 a day.
Yeah.
And that's all through the summer. In other words, you might say start in April, around April, and then on through August.
And what does your job entail exactly?
Well, I'm security, really, but to meet the people, for one thing. So in other words, all I do is stay on the front, see.
How often does Elvis get down to Graceland's these days?
Well, he gets here quite a bit, but most of the time he's hid out, you know. He kind of relax and don't let anybody know he's here for a few days.
Yeah.
So, but then if he ever goes out, then that runs it, see.
Yeah.
Everybody knows it,
Yeah. Well, can you tell us something about Graceland's, the interior? What's it like inside?
It's kind of hard to explain it. There's 23 rooms to the house, and so all the upstairs here is Elvis's main apartments. You know, he's got it's about 6 or 7, 8 rooms upstairs.
Yeah.
So the wardrobe is on this corner here, and then to the right of it is his nursery. And then he has a barber shop, office, and then the bedroom to the right there. So it's all kind of a gold padded walls, you know, colored in gold.
Yeah. Does he have a special room for all his awards, etc.?
Oh yeah. To the right you got an 85-foot trophy room. It's 50 feet wide and 85 feet long.
Yeah.
That's to the right of the house. It goes down to the pool.
What kind of people would come here with Elvis as his guests?
Well, he don't really have too many guests. He's got so many on payroll, so when they all get here, he's got all he needs, you know, to entertain him.
Yeah.
They keep him company, and then they security too, you see.
Yeah, and they're his friends. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
That's right.
Where else do you get people coming from?
All over.
All over the world?
They used to get them out of Cuba in 58 and 9, but they don't have them anymore, you know. It kind of disagrees, you know.
Does Elvis ever talk to you about his plans for the future?
Not too much. He still has a contract through 89, you know.
That's with Colonel Parker?
That's movies. So I don't know what they're going to do. They seem to be working him overtime now. He's doing a lot of personal appearances.
Yeah, in Vegas?
Yeah, well, Vegas is 2 months a year. That's in the spring and then in the late summer.
Is he contracted for some number of years on the Vegas?
They had a 5-year contract. I'm not sure, but I believe this is the last year.
Yeah.
In Vegas. Now, somebody said he had a new hotel that's going to open. Now, I don't know about that.
I see, yeah. Okay, well, in fact, you are the uncle. Which part of the family tree do you come in on?
I'm the father's brother.
You're, sorry?
His daddy and me are brothers.
I see.
We married sisters.
Yeah. Does his daddy is his daddy in Memphis right now?
No, he's with Elvis.
He's over in Vegas.
He sort of goes along as security and takes care of part of the business too. In other words, he's over the personal business here.
Yeah.
So when he's on tour, it takes all they can get for security.
Yeah.
So Vernon goes along too.
Did you when you were a younger man, were you living in Tupelo where Elvis was born?
Yes.
All the family comes from Tupelo.
Yeah, I taught him to play the guitar.
Did you really?
Yeah, sure did.
Did he pick it up really easy or?
Yes, he did. Pretty easy.
Yeah. And all the stories we hear about him starting singing in school.
That's not so.
It's not so.
I tell you, he never. Elvis didn't try to do very much till he got up about 18.
Really?
After he became 18, and he began to kind of sing a little bit, and so actually he got into this place sort of accidental, you know, this singing, because he had this. His first record was cut. He got it for his mother, you know, Had it cut for his mother, just a dub. It cost him $4.
Right.
So they kept his voice on tape, and after he cut that, in about 6 months, they called him and asked him would he be interested in recording. He said he'd try, so the first record was Wild, you know.
And what kind of songs did he like in those early days when he was a youngster? What kind of songs did he sing?
He's like I was. He's raised up on country and western, you know.
Yeah.
But country and western at that time wasn't a big seller all that much, you know. It is now. I think it's about as big as any of them, and I still love it.
Yeah.
But You Rock and Roll was a big seller, and it happened on the first record he cut was Blue Moon in Kentucky, which was country.
Yeah.
Bluegrass.
Yeah.
And then the other one was a rock.
Yeah.
All Right Mama. So
Right.
that's the reason he found out that rock was really a big seller to him, because he didn't know for sure. You see.
What kind of singers impressed him in those early days? Because suddenly Elvis came along and he had this really beautiful new approach to it, and a very original approach which no one has ever been
I never
able
heard
to
him. He always liked Jim Reeves. Jim was a, you know, and I think most everybody did. I thought he was about the best singer I ever heard in my life. You know, his voice was so smooth.
What about the blues? I mean,
he liked Fats Domino. He liked Ray Charles. And stuff. He still likes them.
Yeah. What about the wiggle? When you first saw the wiggle way back there and the pelvis shaking, what did you think about it?
I thought it's crazy. But it seemed to pay off, see?
Yeah.
But I asked him one time how come to do that. He said he was scared.
Yeah? He was shaking out of fear.
He said, I was scared to start with, and it looked like it went over pretty big, and I just kept it up.
Yeah, and he kept it in the act. Fabulous.
I think that was part of the truth, because he looked like he was scared, you know.
Yeah. People don't get too near Elvis. Would you say he's a happy boy today? He's had a lot of problems with the marriage and everything, but...
Well, I don't think he's very happy on that, because Elvis loved Priscilla. I think he still loves Priscilla.
Yeah.
And she does him. It's just a little misunderstanding there, and let's put it like this. They couldn't be together like they should. There's too many people working for him that's in between this marriage, more or less.
I see.
So, you know, you got your security, and every time she come down, she'd see all that bunch, and there's no privacy.
Yeah.
So,
and she didn't dig the bunch he was with, probably.
Well, I wouldn't say. I think she just didn't. It wasn't the bunch. It just more or less couldn't have the privacy with him.
I see. Yeah.
I think she didn't have anything against the bunch that works for him. It's just the privacy they didn't have.
Yeah. Coming out of the marriage situation, what about outside that? Is Elvis a happy man? Is he content with this prison type existence he has?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't want to give up his. Career or nothing like get out of it. I'm sure of that, because he seems to enjoy that. That's the reason he's doing so many personal appearances now. He don't really have to do that.
Yeah.
He don't need the money and nothing, but it's just it gets him out of the house, because if he is in the house or here at home, the only thing he could ever do would just lay up there and sleep and get out late at night, see. So that's all he could ever do.
Yeah.
So I think he's enjoyed it much better to go like he is and do these personal appearances.
Has Elvis ever spoke to you about Europe? Is he afraid of flying? Does he not do flying?
No, I don't know what's wrong there. Now, they have talked about going to Europe, and they talked last year about that.
Sure.
And they had it on their mind this year, but now I don't know what's held him back about the thing. But I'm sure he wants to go.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go to Australia, too.
How did he like it when he was over in the forces in Germany? Did he like Europe then?
Well, he was in service then. I think that made the difference. He said, to heck with it, but the service makes a lot of difference. When you're tied down, you can't do nothing.
Sure.
So he's always said he'd like to go back on tour.
Yeah.
So I think he would like to do that.
Yeah.
And of course, he hadn't never made too much overseas nowhere.
No, right. He's never sneaked off without doing a show. I mean, has he ever gone to Europe just to have a look around?
No, he hadn't.
He's never.
I believe the only places he's ever been overseas, might say, is Hawaii. He'd been over there several times. So as far as the rest of it, I don't believe he's ever made personal appearances in anything.
Good. Uncle Vesta, we thank you very much.
You're welcome. Nice talking to you. Nice to have all you people here.
Radio Lucky Luxembourg.
It was a special pleasure on this trip to meet and chat with Elvis's great friend, guitarist and handkerchief giver, Charlie Hodge.
How you doing?
All right, Charlie.
I hope you have a lot of fans out there that digging Elvis as much as I dig working for him.
What do you do for Elvis, Charlie? Would you tell the listeners in Europe who couldn't make it this time?
Well, I do a little bit of everything. I kind of sing harmony, and I give him his scarves and his water. I'm kind of the original Gunga Din.
Yeah.
And I play a little guitar.
How long have you been working with Elvis?
Since about 1958. We were in the Army together.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
In Germany?
Yeah.
Well, we're from Luxembourg. That's not far from where you were based,
Yeah, we used to
right?
listen to...
Did you listen to Radio Luxembourg?
Yes, we did.
Did Elvis listen to Radio Luxembourg?
Well, we were stationed in different outfits, actually.
Yeah?
It was about 10 miles apart.
Yeah? So it was highly likely Elvis listened to Radio Luxembourg in those days?
Yeah.
Terrific. And can you just tell the listeners what is he like as a
Well, I'll
boss?
tell you what. I'll put it, the best compliment I think I can pay him for myself is I love him, he's my friend, and then I work for him.
Nice one. Thank you,
All right.
Charlie Hodge.
Thank you, and I got to get on stage.
God bless you.
Okay.
Have a good show.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Radio Luxembourg.
I've always felt that making people laugh must be one of the most difficult jobs in entertainment. But to try to make people laugh when they've travelled from all over the world to see Elvis Presley is surely one of the great comedic challenges in the book.
Jackie Kahane has been on the bill, as far as I know, at least 2 seasons with Elvis. Is that right, Jackie?
It's been 2 years now. Yeah, well, you call it 2 seasons. As far as Las Vegas is concerned, it's 2 seasons.
Have you done Lake Tahoe with him as well?
Yes, I did Lake Tahoe with him.
So-
I've done the concerts with him for the past 2 years.
So you're the King's Court jester, I suppose?
Well, in a sense, I am the King's Court jester, but I don't think any King's Court jester had the time I had in days of yore, no.
No, you have a good time, do you?
Well, we have a wonderful time, but you have no idea what is preceding Elvis Presley, especially on concerts.
Because they're very impatient to get to Elvis, I suppose.
Well-
It is a difficult gig, yeah.
He is undoubtedly the biggest drawing card in America. I'm sure he's big in Europe too.
He is indeed the biggest.
And when they come to a concert, all they expect is Elvis. All they want is Elvis. And I've always said I'm sort of like, if the people in Europe understand this, I'm batting practice before a baseball game. The people don't come to see batting practice, but once they're there, they watch it.
Yeah, sure.
So,
sure.
But it's a tremendous challenge, and
Put yourself down.
No, you-
it's a tremendous challenge. I enjoy every minute of it, and I'm really privileged to be with Elvis.
Do you see a lot of Elvis?
I see quite a bit of him.
Yeah?
Yes.
What do you think of him as a person? What do you see?
As a person, he is.
I gotta go. Tony, you're a great guy.
So are you,
I'll see
Colonel.
you.
God
Bye.
bless you. All the very best. Yeah, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
I think as a person, Elvis, for the star here, is a very self-effacing guy, very nice guy, and sure a gentleman, very gentleman.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Do you think you could live the kind of life he does? I know he's a very rich man, but could you live this prison-type existence? So you can go out on the street and sign a few autographs, maybe, but he couldn't.
Well, I don't know whether I could or not. I'd like to try it for a week.
Yeah.
Just for a week. I don't
Just
think.
to feel the money, eh?
Yes,
Right.
but I don't think I'd want a life like that. It'd be very difficult for me to live. Of course, Elvis has been doing it for 19 years, so he's accustomed to it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never actually had to do it, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I guess he came straight from the trucks, which was one existence and one horrible type of life, into this other very glamorous, but yet still a reasonably horrible kind of life, unless you've got the temperament to adjust to it.
Well, that's about it. You need a temperament to adjust to it. I don't think I have the temperament. I don't think I possess the temperament. I'm too much of a neurotic
Yeah.
to be locked up, as it were, and not to be able to go outside, not to be able to go in a restaurant. Although when I'm with Elvis, and it's, I have a slight idea of what it is to be Elvis, because people figure they can't get to the cow, so they get to the calf, you see.
get a lot of people
so
approaching you.
they approach me with some of the most ridiculous questions you've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I know Elvis. He's a very nice man. He's been awfully nice to me and my family, and he's a generous guy, and I hope I work with him forever.
Yeah, I hope you do too. You're talking about the fans and the things they get up to try and meet Elvis. Can you give me any strange ones that happened?
Oh, they will do anything to meet Elvis. They will use disguises. They'll use any pretense whatsoever. They'll mention names. They'll ask me. Well, they will volunteer certain things which I don't think are acceptable for radio and they'll
Or
say-
television.
Or television, and. They say if I can get them up to Elvis's room, they'd be very, very accommodating,
Very
as it were,
obliging.
very obliging. And I always say to them, I have a daughter as old as you,
Yeah,
type thing.
yeah.
but they'll do anything to get to Elvis. We've had a girl jump from a balcony right onto the stage. Fortunately, she fell on the musician. I say fortunately, a soft musician. Otherwise, she'd have gotten killed. I've seen some of the most ridiculous things, especially on concert tours, where now we're not talking about the youngsters or the groupies. These are older. We call them the droopies. We saw 4 ladies. We were in New York, which is supposed to be sophisticated. In New York, Elvis threw a handkerchief out, and 4 adult women grabbed it. And they would not let go of it, 4 of them, and so the policemen, they had to act as sort of King Solomon's. About 10 policemen hustled them off into a corner. One policeman took out a penknife, cut the handkerchief in 4, and gave them each a piece. So,
true story.
Oh yes. There are 18,000 people who attest to that, because that's what we get in concerts.
Jackie Kahane, we'll look forward to seeing you in Europe someday.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
I
for
hope to see you. Thank you for having me.
Radio Luxembourg.
I had to include the warm and loving words of Priscilla Presley.
I had a friend who had asked if I wanted to visit. Well, actually, it wasn't even a friend. It was someone who saw me at the Eagles Club, which was a place where kids from the military and families would go and hang out, get a bite to eat, have dinner or lunch, or there was an entertainment night on Saturday nights, and I would go there every day, write letters and have a bite to eat and take my brother with me. And there was a guy that was kind of, knew that I was there and came over to me one day and saw me writing a letter and said, what are you doing? And I told him, how long you been here? About 3 weeks. And then he said, do you like Elvis Presley? And I said, yeah, who doesn't like Elvis? And he says, would you like to meet him? And I said, I can't do it, unless, I talked to my parents. So my parents met, and it was a couple of days. It wasn't like something that happened right away. My parents wanted to know who in the heck this person is. It was, him and his wife. And after he met them, or my parents did, they said, well, they seem like a very nice couple. And back then, it was very innocent. It wasn't like it is today in any way. You didn't hear about horrible stories that went on, and it was just the era. I went to see him on a weekend, and I walked into the room, and he was sitting there with a few of his friends, and he got up, and he was such a gentleman. It was hard to believe, you'd hear all these stories, but he was just nice, and damn, he was good looking. It was unbelievable to see this guy sitting there, and even more beautiful in person than on the screen, if that could even, be possible. So we sat and talked and actually got along quite well. I think he was happy that there was someone that could speak English and respond and have a conversation with him. And he was all excited. I was telling him all the things that was going on in the States. Anyway, one thing led to another, and about 2 or 3 days later, I got a call saying that he wanted to see me again, which was a shock to me, but more so to my parents. They couldn't understand why, Elvis wanted to see me again. But I explained to them that it was really just not, it was with a bunch of people. His father was there, his grandmother's there, cooking every night. So it was a very down-home feeling. And to be honest, it was great for me too, because I had just got to Germany and didn't know anyone at that time and hadn't even started school yet. I was going into the 9th grade. So I got a call about 2 days or 3 days after that asking if I could come back. And that was the beginning of the relationship for 6 months, and then he left. He had talked about wanting me to go to the States and wanting me to go to Graceland. That's all he talked about, was wanting to take me to Graceland and meet everyone there. There were those conversations, and it was somewhat of a future for me, but I never in my wildest dreams thought it would ever happen in any sense. It was just, to me, talk and never thinking that would actually happen. I literally kept my life very private. No one really knew who I was. Rumors were about and around, obviously, that I was dating and that we were together for a long time. But it was more to protect him, and that fear wasn't going to be there to stop his career at all. There was that threat that if you married, that would be the end of your career. If you married, that the fans are no longer going to be interested in you. So that was the bane of my existence, obviously, and I think the threat to him. Even though there was a lot of care I think that when you have something like that thrown into you, those are things you need to consider, especially at that time. He was on the cover of every magazine, on every tabloid at that time. We had talked about marriage on and off. Timing was always wrong. Career moves, didn't feel it was really quite the time. He always told me he would let me know. 21 was always the magic number. That's what he would say, when I was 21. He felt that was the right age, and nothing below, because it was still young. And he was, you have to remember, he was, he was a good 10 and a half years older than myself. So 21 was a magic number for him. And then when it became around that time, he'd say to me that the time was right, that he felt that we should be married. First of all, it had to be the best kept secret. No one knew anything about it. There was going to be a November date. We canceled that out. It was too close to Christmas, and so we decided on May. We did it all very, very privately. My parents were called in at the last minute. Obviously, I let them know and told them when they would be, coming. We had them come to Palm Springs to meet up with us. That's where we were staying at the time. Everybody, very discreetly and very privately were coming into Palm Springs, and there was word or rumor that there might possibly be a marriage. Rona Barrett was the first, at that time, gossip columnist that was there on the scene, thinking and feeling that there was something going on. She was tipped off. We had a party the night before at our home in Palm Springs, drinking champagne as a celebration before we got married. So none of us slept, that's for sure. We stayed up all night long because we were afraid. We wanted to get to get our marriage license right away before it opened up. So that was all prearranged. So we snuck into Vegas early in the morning and got our marriage license, and then went right to the Aladdin Hotel. Both of us extremely nervous. Elvis extremely nervous. I was in one room and got dressed. He never saw me, so it was quite traditional in that way. I had never saw him and what he looked like, so we kept that very special. We didn't have that many people coming in from Memphis because we felt that the more word had gotten out, then obviously that would be destroyed. So Colonel Parker arranged it for the Aladdin Hotel and through Milton Prell at the time. And we had a private suite. We had a judge perform the marriage. And it didn't happen fast, but it did happen fast because we had to get in and get out of Vegas very quickly before it turned into a circus. And that was the one thing that we did not want, and that was a circus around our marriage. We thought that was our time together, so everyone around was pretty much protecting us in that date. I would definitely say it was the happiest day of my life.
Luxembourg, Tony Prince. Luxembourg, Tony Prince.
One of the most revealing interviews I ever did was with Joe Esposito, Elvis's best man, and the Memphis Mafia leader, who was the first to find Elvis on the bathroom floor.
Well, I got drafted into the Army the same time Elvis did. And I'm from Chicago originally. And I went to Fort Hood, Texas for basic training. Elvis followed me there. Then I went to Friedberg, Germany for 18 months. Elvis followed me there. He was following me all over while I was in the Army. I didn't meet him in Texas, and I didn't meet him when he first got there, too. I saw him around the base. I didn't want to bother him, just leave him alone, because, being the big star he was, everybody wanted something out of him. But eventually, one of his good friends in the service, they used to play football on the weekends, and one weekend he came over to me and said, "Joe, listen, we need some more players. You want to go play football?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to meet Elvis, So that's how it happened. I went over there. Went into Elvis's house. He had rented for his dad and his grandmother to stay there with him. And walked in the house. Elvis walked up to me and said, "Hey, hi, I'm Elvis Presley." I didn't know who he was, but that's the kind of gentleman he was. And he said, "Joe, you'll be on my team this day." And so we go out, play football for a couple of hours, touch football, and came back to the house. There's a bunch of guys there, and people were all talking. And Elvis, talked to me, asked me where I was from, and all those kinds of things. And he said, "Anytime you want to come on the weekends, you're welcome to come over." So he gave me the phone number of the house, and little by little, became friends and hung out quite a bit. And before I left the service, he said, "Come to work for me." And that's how it all started. Well, being Elvis's friend was an amazing like I say, it changed my whole life. When I got drafted into the service, I tell people it's like I won the lottery, because there's like probably 2 million guys in the service at the time. So it was 2 million to 1 that I was going to go meet Elvis Presley in the Army and end up going to work for him. My life is so much surrounded about Elvis, even now, 30 years after he's gone, that Elvis is a big, big part of my life. And it means a lot to me that I became friends with this man that very few people could ever say they lived the life I ever led. Elvis loved women. There's no two ways about it. He was very close to women. He was more comfortable around women than men, actually. You know, and he spent a lot of time with girls talking about life in general, like he probably did with his mother. See what I'm saying? So I think he related closer to women than he did to men. I was there the day he met Priscilla. There was this guy in the Air Force that was a friend of Elvis's, and he was telling her about this beautiful young lady that he knew, and she wanted to meet him. So one evening he brought her over to the house, and there was a bunch of us in the house, just like we always hung out. And Priscilla came in the door, and this beautiful young lady walked in, and this cute little navy dress, very beautiful, and walked in, and Elvis walked up to her, did the same thing he did to me, you know, and he introduced himself, and I could tell she was a little nervous, which I don't blame her. And they started talking. He took her on the side by himself, and they talked for a long time, and basically that's how it all started. Later on that evening, he sat at this piano and played a lot of oldies but goodies songs, and they got together, and that's how the whole thing started. Elvis and Priscilla talked about it the year before they got married, about getting married, and they're the ones that really, you know, like people say, oh, Colonel made Elvis get married because he's been going out with this girl all these years and stuff like that. So, no, it was just Elvis and Priscilla decided to get married. And then he went and talked to Colonel about it, and he helped set it up, and I helped set it up, and that's how it was. The gentleman that owned the Aladdin Hotel at that time was a good friend of the Colonel's. Milton Prell, that's his name, Milton Prell. And a very nice man, because he owned the Sahara before that, and we used to go hang out there too. So he said, listen, we'll do it, Milton Prell said, listen, we'll do it in my suite instead of doing it out in public somewhere. So that's how it was all set up with that, and so we decided to do it there, and he made sure everybody kept quiet about it, didn't tell anybody about it. They arranged a big reception after for all the friends and everything too. So what happened, we planned that everybody get to meet in Palm Springs. Elvis had a house in Palm Springs. So we all decided to all go to Palm Springs, and then he had his family and father and his wife and different people fly in from Memphis. And I put them all in a hotel in Palm Springs. So naturally the press came to Palm Springs because they figured, hey, he's going to get married here. In the middle of the night, we go out over our back fence in our backyard of this house we had rented. There's 2 cars sitting back there out there waiting for us. Took us to the airport. We get on the plane. We fly to Las Vegas. Hotel security was waiting for us, and the police were there waiting. We get in the car, we go right to the mayor's license in downtown Las Vegas. And we go up there and sign all the papers, and Elvis didn't have money to pay for the damn license. Luckily, I had money in my pocket, so I paid for the license. And I said, now you owe me one, Elvis. He said, you got it. So we go back to the hotel, and everybody rests a little bit, and Elvis goes in his suite. They had separate, naturally, because, you know, you're not supposed to see each other when you get dressed and all that stuff. So, and I took a bunch of pictures at that time during getting ready and all that stuff, and dressed in the tuxedos and all of us getting dressed. And I was Elvis's best man at the time, co-best man at the time. So got that all set up, and then we went into Milton Prell's suite and had the wedding ceremony right there. And then after the ceremony, naturally they hugged and kissed, and it was great. And it was, I was very honored to be one of Elvis's best men at his wedding. I mean, there's one thing I will always remember all my life, that I was Elvis Presley's best man. It's just amazing to me when I think about it. So after that, there was a little press conference. See, before the wedding, Colonel, I know he had somebody call the newspapers and television stations to say, Elvis and Priscilla are getting married right now, and if you want to do a press conference, come to the Aladdin Hotel. Rona Barrett was very upset, the reporter from Hollywood, that she didn't catch us. She was in the wrong city at the time, but Rona Barrett and I are still friends, so it doesn't matter. And it was very nice. It was very exciting. And then, you know, after that, we spent a couple of days in Palm Springs. We went back to Memphis. Then Elvis had a big reception at his house at Graceland. for all his family members and friends from Memphis. They had a big party there. They were in their, she was in a wedding dress, and Elvis was in his tuxedo. Had a nice little party for them at the house, and that was fun too. It was really nice. I miss the man every day. There's not a day goes by that I don't hear his name mentioned, or hear him on the radio, or see something in the newspaper about him, or somebody doesn't come and ask me about him. So he's a very, very big part of my life. I mean, my life is not surrounded about Elvis. I work at the Wynn Resort in Las Vegas, and Steve Wynn was a good friend of Elvis's and mine back in 1969 all the way. And so I get people come to the hotel. They know I'm working there. All these big Elvis fans and big, even high rollers are big Elvis fans and come in to talk to me about Elvis and stuff like that. So he is a big part of my life still today.
It's beautiful.
During 2007, I also had the pleasure of bumping into Jennifer Holden, one great lady. And one lucky lady, back in the day, she starred with Elvis in Jailhouse Rock.
I was in Las Vegas, and he came out of the New Frontier Hotel, and he had this beautiful black leather jacket on and pants, and I wanted to trip him. But I didn't. So anyway, I was introduced, but I didn't really know ever that I was going to end up doing a film with him. He was about going into the Army. And he was very, very emotionally, discerned about it. And so it was very difficult at first to communicate with him, but Judy Tyler, sweetheart, was a go-between. So finally we started to, communicate. And, he said he was sorry and everything. But this is after, both of us were just like this for about a week. And then we went into the kissing scene, and that sort of lightened up the atmosphere. He loved his mother, but women were really a projection of his mother. So he was very respectful. He wasn't a womanizer, as you would say, use and abuse. He was a real loving, sensitive being. I'm so jealous of me. It was wonderful meeting him. He's a sweetheart. And lovely lips.
Radio Luxembourg, Great Britain.
One of the funniest things I ever saw was a little Scottish girl called Vicky Slaughter giving Elvis a piece of her mind. Poor Elvis. He must have got pretty tired of seeing fan after fan, night after night. But Vicky wasn't a fan. She was the wife of Todd Slaughter, and she wasn't very happy with the short time Elvis had allocated for their meeting.
Here on Radio Luxembourg is Vicky Slaughter, the wife of Todd Slaughter, the British and European fan club secretary for the Elvis Presley fan club. Vicky, literally a matter of a couple of hours ago, went downstairs in the Hilton to meet Elvis Presley. Vicky, what happened down there tonight? You were ushered into the room like last year, was it?
We were told to be there by 7 o'clock.
And what happened?
We got there at 7 o'clock and we were told that we had to wait till 8:20.
Why was this?
Well, to see Elvis just before he went on his show. I don't know why, but that's what they said.
Originally, you and Todd were told to be there at 7
o'clock,
and
yeah.
you had to wait an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, an hour and 20 minutes. And then we got in and a guard came along and took us backstage to the lift. And he said that we'd have 60 seconds with Elvis, just time to take a photograph. And that was it.
That wasn't quite like what happened last year, was it?
Well, we had 8 minutes last year.
Yeah. What happened when Elvis walked in then?
Well, Elvis just appeared. We all got pushed into the photograph.
Yeah. Did he say, nice to see you again, or anything like that?
No, I can't remember speaking to me at all, saying anything like that.
Did you speak to him? Come on, we want to know what you said.
Well, I didn't say hello to him or greet him like I did last year. Last year I just about fainted and gave him a huge big kiss. Yeah. But this year I just, well, I suppose you're going to explain to them all the troubles we've had on the trip.
It doesn't run exactly as
so I wasn't feeling
like.
very happy about meeting him.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say him a piece. So I just told Elvis it was real big of him to give us 1 minute, exactly 1 minute of his time. So he caught hold of Mum and says, "What did you say, baby?"
What did you say then?
Well, I repeated it twice again, and I think he went pretty pink.
You made Elvis blush. He was embarrassed, was he?
Well, I think he did, yes.
Yeah.
And he sort of floundered about a bit for words, and then he said, well, it was pretty busy.
He said he was busy.
It was pretty busy, yes, and he was sorry it couldn't have been more than 60 seconds, and I don't really think it was 60 seconds. And I just said, I'll bet. And that was that. That was the big meeting with Elvis Presley that I'd come 10,000 miles for.
Yeah.
And I was really speaking on behalf of the fans when I said that.
Speaking as the wife of the man who's done all that very hard work in the past 12 months and many, many months before, you must, the family must take second place, the work Todd puts in the fan club, right?
What do you mean, the family?
Your family in England, Todd does so much work. Like, you don't have, let's say, the normal time of a husband that an ordinary man and woman would
Well, I
have.
don't really, because we've got 2 rooms, a lounge and a dining room, and most nights Todd's working. He's got the lounge, sort of made into an office.
Yeah.
And most nights he's in there pretty busy, sometimes till 3 o'clock in the morning. In fact, I've got up at 6 o'clock in the morning sometimes. One time I can remember when we were going somewhere to find Todd still typing and duplicating, and I went absolutely crazy.
Yeah. So your emotions downstairs tonight with Elvis must have been as the wife of the fan club secretary who's done all this hard work, and you were probably bitterly disappointed that he's been treated this way, eh? By the Colonel
Yeah,
and
not
Elvis.
only Todd. The fact is, Tony, I'm bitterly disappointed on behalf of all the fans as well. And really speaking, considering that Todd does run the fan club and that he's done all this work, say, for the last 2 years and made all this possible for the fans. Last year you might have made the allowances, the fact that Elvis didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
But this year I've been told by a few people that Elvis Presley especially mentioned at one of his shows that Mr. and Mrs. Slaughter were in the audience and he'd like to say
He did
hello.
indeed, yeah.
He said that, and that he'd like to meet them. We weren't at that show, we've only seen one show so far, and I really don't think we're going to see any more shows.
Yeah. If you had Elvis in this room right now at this minute, what would you say to him?
Well, really, I should like to talk to Elvis about the system, and I should really like to find out, because I'm a bit bewildered at the moment, but I should really like to find out if this is exactly how Elvis feels and if he knows how his fans are being treated. Because I think Elvis Presley should... a lot of fans, real fanatical fans, are going to be very angry for me saying this, but I really think Elvis Presley owes a lot to his fans, whatever anybody else says. I think he does, and I think it's about time he got round to showing his appreciation for his fans. But whether it is, and I've puzzled this over and made myself quite ill about it since I've been here, whether it's the fact that it's the Elvis Presley system or whether it's Elvis Presley himself, I don't know. But the fact is that Elvis Presley did know that he was going to meet us, and he must have known that we were only going to have 60 seconds of his time.
The rhythm of nightlife in Great Britain. Radio Luxembourg.
Later, I managed to corner Elvis's fan club secretary, Todd Slaughter, who told me of his own adventures.
Here we are with Todd Slaughter, the guy who got it all together for the second year in a row, brought a bunch of fans over to see Elvis. Well, Todd, here we are on the final day. You're flying back to Britain in a couple of hours from now with everyone. How do you personally think it's gone this year?
I think as far as the tour organisation is concerned, the hotels and timings and everything, it was much better than last year. I think we gained a lot of experience last year, and everything's really gone smoothly this time.
Yeah. Let's talk about Elvis. How do you think that's gone, the show and all this? We had a few hassles.
Well, I arrived in Las Vegas a day earlier than the party, principally to check our hotels out. And it was when I arrived in Las Vegas that I realised we'd got ticketing problems. We had been promised 3 shows, but when I arrived, it looked as if we were only going to get 1 each. But eventually, after fighting the hotel, we eventually made arrangements for most kids to see as many shows as they wanted to.
And in fact, did the kids get to see as many shows as they wanted to?
I think most of them did. Some of them were disappointed, but I think you have to be a bit pushy here.
Yeah.
Las Vegas is a gambling town, and really that's all that the hierarchy there are interested in. And it's pretty apparent, the hotels are very splendid, enormous places. And they've got to get the revenue to keep these things going from somewhere.
Yeah. On reflection now, Todd, last year we came along and had a good 20 minutes down in the dressing room. This year you went separately than I, and you had a similar experience. It was about a minute or less with Elvis on his way upstage, onto the stage. On reflection, how do you feel about the treatment you've received?
I can't really speak personally on this. The hang-up that bothers me is that, of course, any fan on that trip would have been welcome of 60 Seconds with Elvis Presley.
Sure.
And to criticise it on that basis is rather unfair. On our trip this year, we had a great deal of press, both European and Great Britain. Yourself and Ken Evans from Radio Luxembourg. And this is really where it gets me. It's about time that the Elvis Presley organisation forgot the business side of the operation and started a bit of public relations. The arrangement that Elvis has with his fans is very cut away from real life, in actual fact. Presley's the big superstar of all time. One of the things that happened to the music business about 4 years ago is that everything as far as the stardom side of entertainment was forgotten. And really it was only the Osmonds and the Jackson 5 that sort of brought the glamour back into it. Presley was the guy that's been keeping it going for such a long time.
Yeah.
But it's been a very frustrating type of fanaticism, if you like.
For the fan?
For the fan, certainly for the fan.
You just said, though, that he kept the glamour intact. Could not, it's a very controversial point, could not it be that the reason he kept it intact is because he's kept in this glass cage and no one can get to him?
Well, I think you've got to look at show business people from years ago and see how they reacted. Frank Sinatra, who's going to make a comeback in Las Vegas very, very shortly, he never cut himself off from his fans. Okay, it was difficult to meet, but at least you could get to meet him. But he was in a different environment. He used to knock about, if you like, with other entertainment people.
Yeah.
Presley doesn't. And I think this is something that he lacks in his life. He should really get to know what's going on in show business. When he gets to Las Vegas, he stays in that hotel for a month and doesn't go out the door, let alone play the tables.
Yeah.
Okay, when Frank Sinatra used to appear in Las Vegas, he used to get a fantastic sum. And of course, it was always reported that he used to lose it all on the tables. But then that was his life,
Yeah.
And he used to play with Dean Martin and other artists that he used to appear with, Sammy Davis Jr., who were all friends. Elvis Presley doesn't seem to have any friends in the entertainment business. But if that's his life, then, that's his life.
Yeah. What for the future, for the club and things, Todd? I mean, what about next year, for example? Are you going to bring the fans over again?
I think, really, we've got to find out just what Presley's going to do. I don't think it would be... Although Las Vegas is a marvellous place, it really isn't a British kids' type of holiday area. It is gambling all the time. If Presley would arrange to appear in San Francisco, New York, or in Hollywood somewhere, that would be ideal. And that I would consider. But until we know what he's doing, I don't really know. We have some ideas of what to do for next year. We're thinking of a 4 or 5 day mini cruise to either the north of Spain or Hamburg and have a floating non-stop convention, if you like.
Yeah.
Disco films, the lot.
Okay, Todd, the very best of luck. Keep us informed as to Elvis happenings, and we'll let the fans know out there.
Thanks a lot.
And on behalf of all the fans this year, we'd like to say thanks again for a great tour. I don't think there's one person who didn't enjoy it.
In 1973, Todd Slaughter and I didn't get to meet Elvis quite as easily as we had in 1972. We'd both gone our separate ways to try to find the Colonel. Well, I found him, and I eventually met Elvis again, and managed to obtain a very short interview with the biggest message he'd ever sent to his British and European fans.
How are you, Colonel?
Get over here now.
Right, okay.
Make it fast. Just hold it up for a minute. Yes, sir. Real quick, we have to go right up.
How are you, Elvis? I met you last year. Nice to see you
Face
again.
the camera over there.
This is my wife, Christine. This is Ken Evans, the program controller for Radio Luxembourg. Elvis, very quickly, we've got 50 million listeners listening to an 8-hour spectacle in Europe to your show tonight. Have you any message for all the fans in Great Britain and Europe listening to your show tonight?
I just tell them that I really love their devotion and that we got to come see them. We got to. I've been saying it for years, but we will.
We pray you will, Elvis. Thank you.
A badge for your collection.
Oh, thank you. That's
so beautiful. Policeman's helmet.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Blue is a mood. Blue is the sky on a summer's day.
Colorful radio
I do hope you've enjoyed the many exclusive recordings heard for the first time in studio quality. My final interview is with a wonderful lady called May Axton, the mother of country singer Hoyt Axton and a very close friend to Elvis in his formative recording period. Well, you don't get much closer to a guy than writing his first #1 hit, do you?
There's a whole lot of rocking and rolling.
That's Colorful Radio.
The 16th of August, a date that's etched on the mind of Elvis fans around the planet Earth. And this is Tony Prince with a tribute to Elvis, an annual tribute here on Radio Luxembourg. Hope you enjoyed the first part of the program, and I know you're going to enjoy this second hour. My very, very special guest is a very, very special woman. She's May Axton, the lady who wrote Elvis's Heartbreak Hotel. Hello, May, and welcome to the show.
Hello, Tony, and it's so good to be here.
I hope you're having a nice time in Britain and everyone's making you welcome.
A wonderful time. I can't get over it. Everyone's so gracious and kind. And
when you talk to people who don't realize who May Axton is, and people actually tell them that you wrote Heartbreak Hotel, what kind of reaction do you get?
It's been such a positive and excited reaction. Oh, really? And then they'll go bring someone over and introduce someone else. Yeah. It's such a nice thing, I think, because, of course, the power and influence of one of the greatest people of all time, entertainers, because of Elvis.
Yes. He sold 500 million records around the world in his lifetime. How many copies of Heartbreak Hotel do you think have actually been sold?
Well, the last count I had, it was around 18 million each time, through all the years. Now, I have over 200 songs on record, but through the years, that is the classic, and it has paid, quote, the rent, so to speak.
Okay. I'm longing to know the truth. We've all heard rumor about how the song was conceived and how you gave it to Elvis, but from your point of view, from the horse's mouth, as it were, how did it all happen?
Well, I am a journalist, too, and I was writing some stories, and I hadn't looked at a paper because I had 5 stories to get out the deadline that evening. And I was writing longhand, scribbling them off, and my secretary was typing. And this friend of mine, Tommy Durden, with whom I'd written a lot of songs, came in. And he walked in and he said, "Have you read the paper?" And I said, "No, I haven't even looked at it." And he opened up the paper. And on the front page was a picture of a gentleman, very nicely dressed, nice-looking man. And the story said, "Can you identify this man?" And the cut line was that he had torn up all identification and had written one line, "I walk a lonely street," and killed himself. And that stunned me because it was such a waste. And I looked at Tommy and I said, "But Tommy, everyone, regardless of how high or low their status in life, how rich or poor, how good or bad, everyone has someone who cares. And when they see this, they will be heartbroken. So there has to be a Heartbreak Hotel at the end of that lonely street." He looked at me and he said, "Let's write it." I said, "Let's do." 22 minutes later, we had it on tape.
That's fantastic. So you didn't know the guy who committed suicide? Had he
Oh, no,
committed
no.
suicide because of a love affair or something like
It
that?
didn't tell. It was a cut line only.
And he just left the message,
Mhm.
I walk a lonely street. And so you wrote the song. Was it anything like the song Elvis actually came out with in the end? Was it the same
It
tempo?
was exactly. Now, Tommy sings, he has a beautiful ballad sort of voice, and he sang it that way. And I said, "No, that isn't it." And this friend of ours, who is responsible for one of our big festivals in the United States called Jamboree in the Hills, who also has written songs with me, and came by about that time, and I said, come on, Glenn, and then is when the thing hit me. This is for Elvis. And I said, come on, we're going to write Elvis's first million seller.
How were you aware of Elvis at that time? What hits had he had? He'd had That's
no.
All Right, Mama out, and...
Right, but you see, I had been working with him from the beginning, right after he made a birthday record for his mother, and when he went down to do that...
So you knew him right from that stage, just after the...
Right after that. I didn't know him till he had this one little record out, because he had gone down to do this, do a record for his mother. He went in the studio and paid him to let him make a record.
That was the Sun Studios.
Right, Sun Studios in Memphis. And Sam Phillips, who owned it, was there, and his lady assistant said, because Sam did things like that, he would take artists, and if he thought they were good, he'd put them out, and then he sold them to majors, and he made a lot of money that way. Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, go on and on, Jerry Lee Lewis.
Jerry Lee Lewis, yeah.
But, and she said to him, you better record that boy fast, said there's something about him and his voice that combines elements of music that no one else has in their singing. So he went out and said, asked him, how would you like to put something on the other side and let's have a record. Of course, naturally that pleased Elvis. And
didn't you know Bob Neal as well, who was going to manage it?
That was, it was after that. Then Sam called several disc jockeys, including Bob Neal, who was a DJ in Memphis, to let them hear this. And he met Elvis, and he heard the song, and he called me, and he began talking to Elvis about managing him and about his going out and really making it a career. And Bob called me because we were friends, and I was doing PR for Colonel Tom Parker on shows he would bring into the States, into the Florida, really. And
this was in your job as a journalist, you were...
Yes, and I would handle newspaper, television,
so at
and
that
radio.
At that stage, May, was songwriting very a secondary thing, a hobby more than anything, or were you making good money out
I was
of it?
making good money, but I was writing pop songs, and then I had just started writing rock songs, I had about 14 on record at this time, rock songs.
What role did you play with Tommy? Did you do the lyrics or the melody? Or?
I did all the lyrics, and he did most of the melody, and I just changed the beat up, and had Glenn Reeves come back. In fact, I offered, when he asked me at this time, when Glenn said, what's the name of it? I said, Heartbreak Hotel. He said, that's the silliest title I ever heard. I said, I'll see you in a little while. So when he came back, we had the song finished.
Sorry, Glenn Reeves, who was he?
Well, he was the young man who came in, and we wrote songs together a lot, too, and Tommy and I, and the three of us often.
I see.
And when we said, let's write that, about that time, Glenn dropped by, and that's when I said, come on.
And he didn't want to know the title, so he wasn't involved
no,
in the song
he
at all.
asked the title.
Yeah.
And when I said Heartbreak Hotel, he said, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard. I don't want any part of it, and he left, said, I'll be back. But when he came back, Glenn could kind of sing like Elvis. He could mock him. Wasn't that good a singer, but he did like Elvis. You know, he could, for fun. He just did it for fun. And when he came back in, I said, Glenn, come on, I want a demo of this song. I want you to do it shaky like Elvis. You know, the beat. So and I said, I'll give you a third of it. And Tommy's fine with Tommy, because anything I want to do, Tommy said, great, you know. And Glenn sat down. He did it. He learned it. He's very bright, and he learned it quickly and recorded the demo for us. And I said, and we'll get you to give you a third of it. He said, I don't want my name on that. He said, I don't want any part of it. I said, I think it's completely stupid and silly. He didn't like it at all.
So did he never get the third?
No.
But you offered it
I gave
to
it
him.
to Elvis.
Oh.
I gave it to Elvis for the simple reason that Elvis had said to me one time on one of his visits to Florida, his tours to Florida, he said, May, I love Florida. I said, someday I hope I have enough money to bring my mother and daddy down to see this state. So I called him that night, and we'll get back to Bob in a minute. I called him and Bob Neal that night, and I said, meet me in Nashville. I've got your first million seller. So they drove. He was afraid of flying then. And they drove over from Memphis to Nashville, and I flew up from Jacksonville, Florida. Played it about 10 times for Elvis. He said, hot dog, May, play it again.
Yeah.
And he loved it. And I knew that at that point, Colonel Tom was in the process of buying the management contract from Bob, and that RCA was in negotiations to buy the contract from Sun.
That's right.
So I said, Elvis, if this is your first original release on RCA, I'll give you a third of it, the writer's rights. And that way you'll make enough money to bring your mother and daddy to Florida. And that's how that was. But back to our meeting, you asked that a few moments ago. Bob Neal, after he had heard the song and seen Elvis and met him and talked with him and knew that they probably could work out a management deal, he began to call his friends because naturally he had nothing to offer unless he had some commitment from friends to do something for this artist he could sign up. And I was one of the people. He called some from Louisiana and Texas, and I was one of the people he called. And he called me and he said, May, said, there's a young man here, said he wears funny clothes and he has long hair, but said he can sing. And I'm going to sign him up. Can you slip him in on a Colonel Tom Parker tour? Because the Colonel always let me have one or two, you know, whoever I wanted to.
Well, the Colonel was
show.
then managing people like Eddie Arnold.
Eddie Arnold, Hank Snow, Andy Griffith.
Very country-oriented artists, you know. Wasn't it difficult to persuade the Colonel to put Elvis, this weird dresser, long-haired person who was doing rockabilly, onto a country pop?
He didn't see him at that point. You see, he wasn't in, I did all the work till he got there, and then Tom Diskin, his chief assistant, came in to set the tickets and all that. Then the Colonel came the day of the show. So I actually hadn't even seen him. He said to me, he saw the name, and he said, who is this man? I said, don't worry, Colonel, it didn't cost you a penny. Because I had worked out a deal. I got a friend of mine to give a couple of free radio spots to the show, not to Elvis. And I had a television show, so I did something on the television show for the show, not Elvis. And I got this friend of mine who owned the Florida Times-Union Jacksonville Journal to let me write a feature story the morning of the show, on the show.
On the acts in the show.
On the acts in the show, but not Elvis.
Right.
He was only mentioned. It also includes da-da-da Elvis Presley. And so that's only, he just saw the name and he hadn't met him. And we were sitting down counting the money when heard all this screaming and everything. And I said, I've got to see what this is. And of course the Colonel had to see too. Went up and it was Elvis on stage, and he had that little pouty grin, you know, and twisted a little bit, and those eyes looking, and they had never heard of him. Now this, a lot of people think, well, you know, it started out somebody starting it. They didn't, no one knew him. He had never been mentioned.
How did he go down?
There were about 14,000 there. They were wild. One little girl said they were just, I saw people with tears going down, and she's never screaming, yelling. And Elvis...
Was there anyone in the music industry at that time causing those kinds of things?
No. And on this particular show, I believe this was Hank Snow was the star. He closed the show. He did the first night. He wouldn't close it after that on the rest of the tour. But he, excuse me, I had taught school there, and the young lady I taught when she was senior high school was standing there. And I kind of pulled her jacket, and she looked around, because the tears were rolling, and she was screaming and yelling. And I said, hey, and she said, oh, hi, Miss Axel. Yeah. And then I said, wait a minute, what is it? What is it about this kid? And I think she gave the most beautiful definition I've ever heard. She said, oh, Miss Axton said, he's just a great big hunk of forbidden fruit. I'd taken them to dinner, Elvis and Scotty Moore and Bill Black, who played with Elvis.
The band, yeah.
Too, and Skeeter Davis, country singer, was with us, and June Carter, who is now Johnny Cash's wife. And we were sitting there talking and eating, you know, and Elvis had on this pink suit and pink lace shirt and nothing under it. And that was before they wore shirts that open all the way down and everything, you know. And I was looking at him and said, Elvis, that doesn't even look really nice on you, and that pink shirt would make me such a pretty blouse. And he sort of grinned, you know, and June Carter said, I'd like that for my blouse. And Skeeter Davis, come on, Elvis, I'm the one should have it.
Were you joking him then? You were jossing him, as they say.
Right, and he just grinned. And then that night, when he did something, a little thing that was kind of cute, he had pulled off his tie. He had a tie, and he'd pulled it off because he was really moving, you know, and the people loved him. They didn't want to let him go, so we signaling him he could do one more after he was supposed to quit. And then he said, well, that was all, he had to leave. He said, I'll see you backstage. Or, made a little remark like that. And I would really, nearly 7,000, nearly half of them left to try to get him backstage. And first thing I knew, I went downstairs on the inside, and we had a lot of police. Colonel's always good about security, any artist. Even if they didn't need it, he had security there just in case. And I heard Elvis yelling, May, May. And I grabbed I said, come on. I was talking to the chief of police at the moment. I said, get your men quick. And he had a little way of signaling, and he got them down, and they ran down. We'd left the door open. It was a baseball park sort of thing. And and where people sometimes drive in, and all the artists' cars were parked right out there. I bet about 500 had gotten in there by the time the police got there, and they had, of course, get them out. Elvis was on top of the showers, and they had pulled his shoes. They'd gotten his shoes, his socks. I saw people with pieces of that pink lace shirt all over the place.
Your lovely blouse.
Yes, my blouse. And the jacket was torn to pieces. He was up there, up on the top of the showers with just his pants on.
Oh, wow.
And
how come they were still on, I ask?
I don't know. They were trying to get him. And it was so funny because the police, of course, started to get him out, and I just stood there with my hands on my hips looking up at him, kind of grin. I said, now see? And that would have made me such a pretty blouse. And he was sitting there hanging up there, and he looked sort of... And I said, oh, well, brown's my color anyway. About 2 weeks later, here came a brown lace shirt exactly like that one.
May Axton is my guest on this tribute to Elvis on Radio Luxembourg. May wrote Heartbreak Hotel, and we're recounting some of her meetings and memories about Elvis. We've just talked about his shirt, which could have made May a lovely blouse. Did he have girlfriends in those early days? Did you ever see him with girls? Was he a womanizer?
No, not really. Elvis, he was the most gentle person I've ever known, and most polite. And till the day he died, he was the most polite thing in the world. Naturally, as he grew, and girls liked him from the first. But he was not a womanizer, and I don't think Elvis ever was, quote, a womanizer. He was he's basically a very... his beliefs and his faith were very in coherence with the things his mother had taught him and his religion had taught him. He was a deeply religious young man.
He was very influenced by his mother, in fact, wasn't he?
Yes, he worshipped her. Yeah. And she did him, and she scrubbed floors, everything, to see that Elvis got the things he needed.
I've been to Tupelo, May, where Gladys gave birth to Elvis, and his twin.
Mississippi.
The twin died at birth, in fact. It's very hard to believe that the biggest pop singer of all time lived in that shack, which is all you can describe it as. 2 rooms. With a little balcony outside. When you knew him, had he, at that stage, moved out of that environment? I suppose he had. That was very early on in his life.
When I first knew him, he lived in a little shabby apartment in Memphis.
Was he driving the truck?
No, he had just started driving, been driving. He was out of high school. This was the summer out of high school, and he was driving the truck.
For extra money.
To try to help his folks, because it was difficult. His mother was scrubbing floors for other people, cleaning house, and his daddy was getting odd jobs. So actually the only regular income, well, his mother had regular because people needed her to clean house, but he was very, very poor. And it just was touching, but he was a good person.
Your first interview with Elvis Presley, you've brought the tape in. I want to play it. Where did it happen? How did it happen?
Well, it was the first time he came into Jacksonville. I met them, and they came in the most dilapidated old car you ever saw. I don't know how they made it. And when they came up, I met them to take them. We had a certain place to meet. I had told Bob Neal to tell them where to come. So I met them there, took them out to the hotel, and when I saw how poor they were, I made a point of paying their hotel that night and taking them to dinner. And I don't know why I really did it. I had a little radio show that was sort of these are our teenagers show, really, was what it was. And for some reason, he was a teenager, I just suddenly thought, well, I always carried my tape, and tape recorder. I think most people do in this business. And I said, Elvis, let's get a little interview, radio interview on tape. And he said, Oh, no, he was scared to death. He said, I've never done anything like that. I said, don't worry, I'll do all the talking. And actually, I had forgotten that I had it until about a year before Elvis died.
Wow. So could this possibly be the first ever interview Elvis
It is the first
did?
ever, it is, I know that.
We're going to hear it right now. May Axton, the lady who wrote Heartbreak Hotel, now with the very first ever Elvis Presley interview.
Elvis, you are sort of a bebop artist more than anything else, aren't you? Is that what you call you?
Well, I never have given myself a name, but a lot of the disc jockeys call me bopping, hillbilly, and bebop. I don't know what.
Sort of a combination of things, but I've seen you perform, and you're a terrific performer. And a lot of my listeners have seen you, and they've heard your records, and they think they're very wonderful. And, of course, you really skyrocketed to fame on That's All Right, Mama. Wasn't that the one?
Well, yes, ma'am. That was the one that got me on my way and everything. It's kind of...
And on Sun Records, I believe.
Ma'am. That's right.
I think that's very fine, and you started touring the country, and you've covered a lot of territory in the last few months, I believe.
Yes, ma'am. I've covered a lot, mostly in West Texas. That's where my records are hottest. Around in San Angelo and Lubbock and Midland and Amarillo.
They tell me that they almost mob you there, the teenagers. They like you so much. But you know, I happen to know that you have toured all down in the eastern part of the country too, down through Florida and around, and that the people went for you there about as well as out in West Texas. Isn't that right?
Well, I wasn't very well known down here. I'm just with a small company, and my records don't have the distribution that they should have, but...
Well, of course, that's coming. You know, it takes a little bit of time for that, and you know, some of the people who've been in the business 20 years, they're just, it takes that long to get distribution all over the United States, but I think you are one of the fastest rising young stars perhaps in the field. And I know that the people go for you. You know, I watched you perform one time down in Florida, and I noticed that the older people got about as big a kick out of you as the teenagers. I thought that was an amazing thing.
Well, I imagine just the way all three of us move on the stage, we act like we just...
Yes, and we mustn't leave out Scotty and Bill, who really do a terrific job in backing you up.
Well, they sure do. I really am lucky to have those two boys, because they really are good. Each one of them has an individual style of his own. And
do you know what I can't understand is how you keep that leg shaking just at the right tempo all the time you're singing.
Well, it gets tired sometimes. I had to stop and rest it, but it just automatically wiggles like that.
Is that it? Just automatically does it? You started back in high school, didn't you? Singing for around public performances for school and things of that sort?
Well, no, I never did sing anywhere in public in my life till I made this first record.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you just went right on and into their hearts, and you're doing a wonderful job, and I want to congratulate you on that. And I want to say, too, Elvis, it's been very nice having you in the studio today.
Well, thank you very much, May, and I'd like to personally thank you for really promoting my records down here, because you really have done a wonderful job, and I really do appreciate it, because if you don't have people backing you, people pushing you, you might as well quit.
Well, you're right there. I do not deserve the credit, though. It's my wonderful friends and listeners all over the country who should be given that credit, because they deserve it, and they're very fine people and very fine friends of yours. I'll tell you what, let's do for those fine friends right now. Let's play your latest number. How about that?
Okay, that's a good deal.
All right.
May Axton, my special guest on this tribute to Elvis. It's nearly time for us to go here. May, I want to know, where were you the night? I mean, you promised Elvis you were going to write his first million seller for him, and indeed you did. Multi-million seller, in fact, Heartbreak Hotel. Where were you the night you heard it got to number one, or the day? You must remember that for the rest of your life. Somebody said to you, you're number one.
Yes, they called me and said they called me before it got out, you know, said you're number one.
Who called you? The record company?
This friend of mine, Steve Scholes with RCA, who is gone now, called, and because he was excited about it, and he was a very dear friend of mine, said you're number one. Actually, before the day was over, I got calls from the Colonel and from everybody, you know, they were all excited about it. And it was such a silly feeling. I think I laughed and I cried, and I was just acted like an idiot, I guess.
Yes.
But it was a happy moment.
The one question I'm asked, because I've had the great fortune of having met the gentleman on 2 occasions, and it's a very difficult question to answer. I've never really been able to put it into words, because emotions are running so high when you're meeting him. Maybe not for you. So perhaps you could answer this question that every fan asks. What was Elvis Presley like?
What was he like, you mean, in his music or personally?
As a person, I think they want to know.
As a person, he was one of the kindest, most generous. He was shy, very shy.
Do you think he got over that later in life, the
No,
shyness? He was
never.
always
He
shy.
never did.
Yeah.
I talked to him the last time about 9 days before he died. He called. Never got over that. He was very sensitive, extremely sensitive to people, and the other way too, in reverse. And he did so many things. Everyone knew about his giving away cars and diamonds and all that stuff. But they didn't know a lot of things he did. Like I know a young lady now who can see because of Elvis. He didn't know her. He just heard about it. And he had everything taken care of quietly. He didn't want those things to go out because he was not a braggart. He was not a forward person at all. He was prayerful. He had a Bible on every plane. And he was very patriotic. He was terribly sincere. He was a one-woman man in spite of all the girls, and he did have a lot of girls. But he was a man who would have one wife. And
so all these nasty things we read in the books that everybody's cashing in on, everybody's writing.
It's ridiculous. They take a little bit of the truth.
Yes. I've always said the only book I will ever believe is if Colonel Tom decides to write the Elvis
And I
Presley
think
story.
someday he will. He's quite a wonderful person, the Colonel, and he's one of the greatest people I've ever known. He's a fun guy, too, and that's what I did want to say that about Elvis. Had a great sense of humor. If I have a moment, I'll tell you one little incident showing that it tickled me. I didn't care. But he wanted me and T.G. Shepard and Diane and several of us to go to Pontiac, Michigan on tour with him, and he called and said, I'll send a plane over. And at that moment, I was going to be able to go. I said, fine. And everybody agreed, and we were going to go. Then the day he sent the plane, I had a call from New York, and a client was coming in, and I couldn't go. So the next day, when they came back, Diane and T.G. came up in my office and said, saying, Elvis had to know everything you were doing. Guess who we talked about all the way and all that sort of stuff. And then they began slinging their hands around. They had these huge diamonds, each one of them. And I said, well, where's mine? They said, he had you one, but he said, you didn't come, you didn't get it.
Oh, wow.
Which is Elvis. He loved to see people's faces when he did something like that.
He loved giving gifts.
Loved it.
Yeah. It's time to say goodnight to you. This is Tony Prince, and my sweet guest is May Axton. May, I was on the air 3 years ago when Elvis died, and it was one of my most moving experiences, having to broadcast for 4 hours after hearing the news. And the listeners know what I'm talking about because many of them were listening that night, and we shared the program together with great heartbreak. Where were you that night, and how did you hear of Elvis's death?
I had gone home from the office early that afternoon, right after noon. And as I was turning the key in my apartment, I lived in an apartment then, the phone was ringing. And I picked it up, and I said, hello, and there was an operator came on and said, Memphis calling, May Axton. I said, this is she. And she said, go ahead, please. And nobody said anything, so I said, hello. Nothing. Hello, I said it about 3 times. And then Elvis's secretary picked up the phone and said, May Vernon was trying to call you, but he couldn't talk when he got on the phone. She said, we're here at the hospital. They're still working on Elvis, but he's gone. We wanted you to know. I was alone, and I'm sorry, but it's still difficult.
I'm sure it is. You had nobody to share it with at that point.
No, when it hit the wire, my friends came from all over everywhere, and they cleared phone calls and everything, but I did do some television interviews with NBC that night and with ABC and CBS the next morning for the simple reason I knew how hurt Elvis was over the book that 3 of his former associates had written. So I felt compelled to do it, and then I slipped off alone, I thought. But people still found me, and it was such a difficult thing to go through because Elvis was like another son to me, and through all the years, to him, I never changed. He never saw the gray or the wrinkles, and every time I saw him, he would pick me up, sling me around and say, May, you never change. I always knew what he was going to say and what would happen. And to him, I didn't. I was still May, the one who met him there in Florida that day.
May Axton, long live the king. Long live May Axton. Good night, God bless.
Thank you, Tony. Good night.
B-I-G-L, B-I-G-L.
How fantastic. An interview within an interview. Mine with May Axton, and May's with the first ever Elvis Presley interview. It doesn't get much more historic than that, does it? That's all from Volume 2 of my Elvis program trilogy. Part 3 is the most famous show I ever did. It's all off-air. There never was a studio recording, because I was so mortified at learning of the death of Elvis Presley, I never thought to record the show. Volume 3 won't just take you back to August the 16th, 1977. It will be a reminder to us all what a terrible signal kids had to put up with back in those days. It was all we had, and we loved every minute of Radio Luxembourg.
Mijn favoriete radiostation is Radio Luxembourg, het station van de sterren.
La radio que je préfère, c'est Radio Luxembourg, la radio des stars.
Meine Lieblingsstation ist Radio Luxembourg, die Station der Stars.
My favorite station is Radio Luxembourg, the station of the stars.
Everybody's saying it. This is Radio Luxembourg, the station of the stars.